What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
Told you once before that many resellers resort to not very honest schemes involving fake buyers, pretend to be car dealers, or try to deceive using psychological tricks. However, this is not all. Often they are able to show quite clearly that the sold car is a wreck, and they rely on facts which we have not taken in quotation marks for nothing, and with which they poke in the face of the confused seller. And the seller gives the car much cheaper than it actually costs, because the reseller knows how to persuade. Painted and beaten. Imagine this situation: you are the second or third owner of the car. The buyer, reseller, knows this, but he also knows that you may not have full information about the past of the car bought at one time from the hands. And this is already a trump card. That's why the thickness gauge was born. A thickness gauge is a tricky device. It can not only measure the paintwork layer, look for secondary paint, putty and scrap metal instead of aluminum, but also scare good people. The models of thickness gauges are quite diverse, but you can fool them. Some of them are enough not too evenly applied to the body, some incorrectly calibrated, and all thickness gauges can be put a piece of paper, which will greatly increase the thickness of paintwork. After that, it remains to poke the numbers in the nose of the seller and announce that his car in several places repainted and patched. And if the car is sold by a person who at one time bought it without careful inspection, there is a high probability that he will believe these figures, get upset and make a big discount. And that's all the scammers want. Another way to reduce the cost of the body inspection, to demand a discount on those flaws that with age appear in all cars. For example, not too clear fixation of open doors. Here they say that it is necessary to replace or repair the door stops, and this is 1,000 or 2 or 3 and so on, depending on the impudence of the reseller. It is usually impossible to prove that the door stoppers work well. In any case, they do not work the same way as in a new car, and the assessment of their effectiveness is too subjective. Almost always resellers know the known weak points of the body and reproach the gullible seller with them. Take, for example, the place of contact between the chrome trim and the rear door on used dusters. The paint there is almost always bubbling, if not peeling off. There are also universal win-win options, for example, chips on hoods, which are found on absolutely any models and can slowly grow even on aluminum. In general, it should be understood that a car with mileage cannot not have at least some shortcomings of paintwork, and resellers unscrupulously use this to justify the bargaining. Deception from below. It is almost impossible to find a car with perfect running gear on the secondary market. That means that you can always discount a little from the price. True, not always reasonably. For example, you should not make a discount if the buyer puts his finger on the brake discs and complains about their wear. Firstly, wear will not be only on a new disc, and secondly, they are generally related to consumables. So you should not worry much about their wear and tear. A classic of the genre claims to the camber bolts of the rear multi-lever suspension. They rust always and every one, especially, of course, in Moscow and St. Petersburg, so you can safely demand a discount on the replacement of these bolts and at the same time to install the angles of convergence and camber. Even relatively new bolts are quickly covered with surface corrosion and look as if it is better not to approach them without a bolt cutter. In fact, not everything is so terrible, so if when selling the car the buyer gently strokes brake discs and sighs reproachfully, meaningfully looking at the camber bolts, do not worry, he is just asking for a not quite reasonable discount. It's gone, but it's broken. When inspecting an engine, many people first remove the oil filler cap and see what it looks like from the inside. Of course, it makes sense. If there is emulsion on it, it can be a sign of a serious malfunction, indicating oil getting into antifreeze. Or antifreeze into oil, from a punctured cylinder head gasket to a crack in the block. However, there are motors, primarily Korean gasoline engines, that often have condensation on this cap that looks like a light-colored scale. This is quite normal, but not everyone knows about it. And shaking this cap in front of the seller is a sacred duty of everyone who wants to buy a car on the cheap. If this happens, offer to check the oil dipstick. If antifreeze and oil mixed, emulsion will be on it, and see if the antifreeze in the expansion tank when you press the gas pedal. Most likely, none of this will happen, and the car has no problems in this respect. A fashionable way to bring down the price is to show a lot of errors on the scanner. Every reseller has an inexpensive diagnostic scanner, but if such a reseller gets into the OBD2 connector with his own cord or adapter, and then shows a bunch of errors on the screen of his smartphone, it is not a reason to panic. Of course, there may be some errors. It happens that in the logs sits even a battery that died the winter before last, but this is not a reason to bargain. Moreover, resellers know how to make these mistakes out of thin air, and in the literal sense of the word. Sometimes it is enough to knowingly choose the wrong engine model so that the connected scanner shows errors. And it can show absolute nonsense. I, for example, saw how one such buyer simulated a timing error. It was about shaft misalignment on a 1.6-liter Ford motor, indicating the version with a phase shifter when diagnosing this motor without a phase shifter when connecting it to the car. Sometimes, however, they do it much easier. They show not the screen of the current diagnostics, but a print screen of the screen with the diagnostics that once produced a bunch of errors. That is, as an argument, they show some strange picture that has nothing to do with the car being examined. It is impossible to shut up the fountain of eloquence of the fence seller. He lists dozens of errors as if they were found, without giving a chance to examine anything. Here you just have to be vigilant, and even better, confident that you are selling a normal car. A bit of psychology. Sometimes there are also variants of outright technical fraud. One of them is a syringe with oil in the hands of a dishonest buyer. During the inspection from below, the buyer used it to simulate oil leakage at the junction of the engine and the box to justify the bargain when buying Mondeo 4. These cars do have such a problem due to weak oil seals, but in the described case, a syringe of oil helped to simulate the missing leak. So before selling the car, it is worth inspecting it yourself on the elevator to make sure there are no problems. And remember that the most clever paracupi people are cunning and brazen. And yet more often they act more simply, pressurize the psyche. Therefore, if purely technical and not always existing, claims to the car are constantly interrupted by stories about the dog, mother, in-law and the weather, and heavy sighs generously diluted with sincere smiles in 46 teeth, then in front of you may stand not ordinary funny man, but a good psychologist. Watch out. Well, the best way not to get caught is to sell the car only with the mandatory re-registration of the car in your presence at the MREO. Such a deal is usually uninteresting to rebuyers, so they will get off. But not immediately, of course. First they will shake out the soul. And still it will be good if they shake out only the soul, but not the money. Money is still needed more. In conclusion, while it may be tempting to cut corners when it comes to car inspections, it's crucial to remember that thorough evaluations can save you from costly surprises down the line. Resellers often highlight non-existent problems to negotiate lower prices, but being informed and vigilant can help you avoid falling into that trap. Always invest in a reliable inspection from a trusted professional to ensure you're making a sound purchase. Remember, a little extra effort now can lead to significant savings and peace of mind in the future. Thank you for watching, and drive safely.